When I first moved into my new house, it felt like a dream come true. I needed a fresh start, a place to call my own, far away from the chaos of the city and all the problems I'd left behind. The house was perfect, small, cozy, in a quiet little town. But you know that feeling when something feels off, even if everything seems normal? Yeah, that's what started creeping up on me, and it didn't. I've never been one to pay much attention to neighbors. I like my privacy and have never been the type to strike up small talk. But there was something different about the man living next door. I only saw him at night. Every night, actually. I didn't know his name, didn't know a thing about him. But there he was like clockwork, pacing around his yard, standing at the edge of the lawn, staring out into the street like he was waiting for something, or someo. At first, I thought maybe he just had some unusual habits. Maybe he was one of those night owls who sleep during the day and wander around at night, right? But it wasn't just that he was outside every night. It was the way he was outside. His movements were slow, deliberate, like he was always watching, always aware of. One night, I got home from the store, and as I was grabbing my bags from the car, I felt it, that unmistakable feeling of eyes on you. I looked up, and sure enough, there he was, standing right near the fence that divided our houses. Just standing there, watching me unpack, not saying a word. It was like he was waiting for me to notice him, to make eye contact. It felt like he was studying me, but I tried to shrug it off. Probably just a weird coincidence. I told myself, no big deal. But as the days went by, I started noticing it more and more. Every time I stepped outside, whether it was to take out the trash, water the plants, or just walk to my car, he was there. And it was always at night, always outside, sometimes pacing, sometimes just standing there perfectly still. He never spoke, never waved, just watched. Funny how your mind starts to create these scenarios, right? I kept telling myself it was nothing. He's just outside for some other reason. It has nothing to do with me. But that feeling, the feeling of being watched, it's almost physical. And as much as I tried to ignore it, there was no shaking the unease I felt around him. I didn't know it then, but this was just the beginning. And soon, I'd come to realize that my neighbor who never sleeps was about to turn my peaceful new life into a living nightmare. It wasn't long before things started getting stranger. I'd wake up some mornings to find random things in my yard, objects that weren't there the night before. It started small. A soda can near my porch steps, a piece of rope tangled in the bushes. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe some kid walking by, messing around. But then, one morning, I stepped out to see something different. Right there, in the grass under my bedroom window, was a small wooden box. And when I opened it, inside were old photographs. Faded, black and white images of people I didn't know. There were also other odds and ends, bits of broken jewelry, buttons, pieces of cloth. It was like a collection of someone's forgotten memories, left out there for me to find. I couldn't explain it. And the weirdest part? That night, when I went back outside to check, the box was gone. Just like that, vanished. Then there were the nights I'd hear things. I'd be trying to sleep, everything quiet, and then a noise, a soft scratching against the side of the house, like fingernails dragging down the walls, or sometimes faint whispers. It was never loud enough to make out what was being said, but I could tell it was there, soft voices just on the edge of hearing, close enough to send shivers down my spine. One time, late at night, I got a text from a friend who lived a few blocks away. She asked if I was okay because she had just driven by my place and saw someone standing right in front of my bedroom window. I jumped out of bed, heart pounding, and looked outside. But by the time I did, there was no one there. Just the dark outline of the trees and the shadows cast by the streetlight. And then, the most unsettling part came when I started finding things on my porch. Not just random junk, but things that felt personal. Like the day I found an old stuffed animal sitting right at my front door. A teddy bear, its fur dirty and matted, with one of its eyes missing. It looked like it had been dragged through mud and left there as some sort of offering. Or the night I came home to find flowers on my steps. Not in a vase, not wrapped in paper. just a pile of wilted, half-dead flowers, laid out as if someone had picked them and left them just for me. I didn't know who could have left them, but deep down I think I already knew. And then, one evening, as I was leaving the house, my neighbor was there again, standing in his usual spot by the fence. He gave me a smile, a slow, unsettling smile, and said, "Nice night, isn't it?" And for a split second, I could see something in his eyes, something knowing, something that made me feel like every single one of those things I'd found was his doing. From that moment on, I knew I couldn't just brush this off anymore. He wasn't just the weird neighbor. He was watching, and every time I stepped outside, I felt like I was part of some twisted game, one that I never agreed to play. I tried to shake it off, tried to convince myself it was all just coincidence, that maybe I was overthinking things. But then the noises started getting louder, more deliberate. Every night, like clockwork, I'd hear them. Footsteps circling the house, slow and steady, like someone was taking their time, walking just outside the windows, making sure I knew they were there. I couldn't take it anymore, so I installed cameras, 4 of them covering every angle of the yard. And that's when I finally saw him. One night, around 2 a.m., I got an alert on my phone. Motion detected. My hands shook as I opened the live feed, and there he was, my neighbor, creeping along the side of my house. His face barely visible in the darkness, but unmistakably him. He was crouched low, moving slowly, almost gliding across the grass, as if trying to stay hidden. And he wasn't just passing by. He stopped at each window, pressing his face against the glass, staring into the dark rooms inside. It was like he was trying to see me, trying to catch a glimpse of where I was. And the worst part was the smile. This unsettling grin, like he was enjoying the hunt. I called the police right away. They came out, did a sweep of the area, but by the time they arrived, he was long gone. I showed them the footage, and they promised to keep an eye out. But all I got was a warning. Maybe just stay inside at night. Then came the morning I found the note. Just a small piece of paper, slipped under my door. The handwriting was messy, almost childlike, and it simply said, "I like watching you sleep." My hands went cold when I read it. I tried to tell myself it was some sort of sick joke, but I knew better. I felt like I couldn't breathe, like the walls were closing in on me. Every sound outside, every creak of a branch, every rustle of leaves, made me jump, convinced he was right there, just out of sight. One night, I came home late and found something that nearly made me scream. A dead bird, laid out on my doorstep, its wings spread open, like it had been carefully arranged. I felt sick. I knew it was him. I knew this was another one of his twisted gifts. But there was nothing I could do. No proof, no witnesses. Just me, alone in this house, and him always lurking. And then he made it obvious. I came home one evening to see him standing outside, holding something shiny in his hand. As I got closer, I saw what it was. An unspent shotgun shell, sitting on the brick wall between our houses. He glanced at me, gave that same slow smile and said, "It's a warning for anyone who gets too close." I didn't know what to say, what to do. I just nodded, walked inside, and locked the door behind me. But my hands were shaking, and I felt like my heart might burst out of my chest. That night, as I tried to sleep, I could hear him out there again, pacing, circling, always circling, like a predator stalking its prey. I wanted to scream, to confront him, to make him stop. But all I could do was lie there, listening to those slow, deliberate footsteps, knowing that my own home was no longer safe. Then came the night everything changed. I had finally convinced myself to get some sleep, even though my nerves were shot. But just as I started to drift off, I woke up to a sound, a soft thud, like something falling. My heart was already racing before I even opened my eyes. I forced myself to get up, grab my phone, and check the cameras. And there he was. This time, he was right up against my front door, crouching, doing something I couldn't quite make out. My mind was a blur, and all I could think was lock everything. I turned on every light in the house, hoping it would scare him off, and as soon as the porch light flickered on, he bolted back to his yard. But that didn't bring any comfort, because when I opened the door, I found a 50-pound flower pot smashed to pieces against it, the shards scattered all over my porch. He had thrown it right at the door. I was shaking as I called the police again, my voice barely steady enough to explain what had just happened. They showed up, filed a report, told me to consider getting a restraining order. And then they left. I stood there, staring at my shattered front step, feeling more exposed than ever. The next night, I did my best to pretend things were normal. I locked every window, checked every camera, and sat down to watch TV, trying to drown out my anxiety. But then, the TV screen flickered, and a message popped up, casting request from neighbor's name. Accept. My stomach dropped. He was trying to connect to my TV. My TV. I hit decline immediately, my hands trembling so badly I almost dropped the remote. He was in his house, right next door, trying to connect to my devices, trying to find a way in. I filed another police report, begged them to do something, anything, but they kept saying there was nothing concrete they could do. He's not on your property right now, they said. We need more evidence. But what more evidence did they need? Every day he was getting closer, pushing further, testing how far he could go. A few weeks later, I went out of town for a conference, hoping that putting some distance between us might give me a chance to breathe. But while I was gone, my security system caught something else. Someone had tried to break into my house. I wasn't there and they didn't get in, but the signs were clear. Scratches around the locks, footprints in the dirt outside my windows. And I knew deep down it was him, testing the waters, seeing what he could get away with. When I got back home, everything felt different. The world was shutting down because of the pandemic, and I found myself trapped in that house with my stalker living just a few feet away. Every time I heard his door open, every time I saw a shadow in his window, my heart raced, and I wondered what he'd do next. And then, he left me a message, a text this time. He said he was sorry for making me uncomfortable, that he was trying to be a better person. But then, at the very end, he added something that sent a chill through my bones. I saw you the other day. Your hair's gotten longer. You look beautiful. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Every second spent in that house was a second in a cage where he held the keys. I knew I had to do something, anything, to break free, because whatever game he was playing, it wasn't over. And I didn't know how much longer I could last. I couldn't take it anymore. I filed for a protection order. I gathered everything. The smashed flower pot, the footage of him creeping around my windows, the messages, the attempted break-in. I sat in that courtroom, trying to steady my voice as I laid out every detail, every moment of fear. And there he was, sitting across the room, staring at me the entire time. He didn't deny a single thing, just nodded, took full responsibility, and told the judge he was trying to change. He didn't even contest the order. For a while after that, things went quiet. I started letting myself believe that maybe it was over, that maybe he'd back off, leave me alone. I tried to get back to my life, to the house that was supposed to be my safe space. But it didn't last. It never does. A few months later, he got back on drugs. I knew it before anyone told me. I could see it in his eyes when he'd glance over the fence, bloodshot, wild, unpredictable. And that's when I found it. Another shotgun shell right in my flower bed, placed carefully, almost like it was on display. It was the same type as before, unspent, clean. A warning. And this time, I knew who it was meant for. My boyfriend, who had just started staying over more frequently. I felt like everything was spiraling. I was living in constant fear, watching every move, feeling trapped in my own home. So my boyfriend moved in officially. He didn't want to leave me alone to deal with this nightmare. And even though the situation was terrifying, having him there made it more bearable. But still, we both lived on edge. Every noise, every shadow, every movement outside our windows set us off. New Year's Eve 2021. It was 2 a.m., and we were finally drifting off to sleep when the yelling started. I sat up in bed, my heart pounding, and grabbed my phone to pull up the camera feed. There he was, my neighbor, hanging halfway out of his window, staring straight at my bedroom, screaming. He ranted for what felt like forever. Obscenities, threats, things that made no sense, his voice slurred and furious. Happy F*** ing New Year, he screamed. I'll blow this whole place up. I'll blow my house sky high, gas line and all. He kept going, rambling about fire, explosions, destruction. 7 minutes. That's how long he screamed. Felt like 7 hours. I called the police again, my voice shaking as I tried to explain what was happening. But when they arrived, they just stood there, taking notes, saying there was nothing illegal about someone yelling from their own house. He never mentioned your name, they said. There's no proof he's violating the protection order. And just like that, they left. I felt hopeless. My whole life became about avoiding him. We parked our cars on the street to keep away from his yard. We kept the blinds drawn, the cameras always on, every corner of the house under surveillance. I spent over $1,000 on security equipment, every inch of my yard covered, but it never felt like enough. Felt like nothing would ever be enough. And then, last week, it escalated again. It was early morning. I was trying to get ready for the day, trying to pretend things were normal, when I heard the screaming start again. Someone is going to die over this sweatshirt. The words tore through the silence, and I jumped to grab my phone, my fingers fumbling as I opened the camera app. He was outside, pacing through the alleyway behind my house, holding something in his hand. Are you and you proud? He screamed, his voice carrying across the yard. How about I go get my shotgun? How about that? The police came eventually. They didn't arrest him for violating the protection order. They didn't press charges for threats. They gave him an ordinance violation for disturbing the peace. And then they left. Again. I thought maybe that would be it. That maybe this time he'd calm down. But last night, I woke up to the sound of hammering, loud, rhythmic, metal on wood hammering, right outside my window. I pulled up the camera feed and saw him, in the middle of the night, cutting down his privacy fence. The one thing that separated our yards, that gave me at least the illusion of safety, was being torn apart board by board, right in front of me. I called the police, desperate, and they told him to stop. But they didn't make him fix it, didn't make him put it back up. Now, what was once a tall, solid fence stands only a few feet high, leaving me completely exposed every time I step outside. And he's still there, outside, pacing, circling, whispering nonsense to people who aren't even there. He'll look over sometimes, give that same twisted smile, and I just know he's not done yet. I'm tired. I'm just so damn tired. I want to live in a house where I don't feel like a prisoner, where every step doesn't make me wonder if today will be the day he finally decides to break in, to do something worse than leave a dead bird or a shotgun shell. We're trying to find a new place, my boyfriend and I, but it's not easy. Not when money is tight, not when you have pets that make renting impossible. And every day we're here feels like playing a game we never agreed to, with rules that change every time he decides to remind us he's watching. I don't know how this will end. I just know that it needs to. And until then, I'll keep looking over my shoulder, listening for those footsteps, and praying that someday, somehow, I can leave this all behind. It all started with the packages. We'd only been living in the house for a couple of months. My partner and I were settling in, figuring out the quirks of the neighborhood, trying to make it feel like home. Everything was great, until that first package showed up. It was left right on our doorstep, late at night. At first glance, it didn't look like anything strange. Just a plain brown box, about the size of a shoebox. No return address, just my name, written in the scratchy handwriting that I didn't recognize. I remember picking it up and thinking maybe it was a delivery we'd forgotten about, something one of us ordered online and just didn't remember. But when I opened it, I knew something was wrong. Inside was just junk. Random things like someone had emptied their junk drawer into a box and left it on our step. A broken key, some old crumpled up photos, a few pebbles, and weirdly a single glove, faded and torn like it had been dragged through mud. I stared at the stuff, trying to make sense of it. Felt deliberate, like whoever left it had chosen each item carefully. But for what and why? I chalked it up to some prank. Maybe from a kid in the neighborhood or a bored teenager looking to mess with someone. So I tossed it out, forgot about it, and moved on with my week. But then another package showed up. A couple of nights later, I woke up to my dog barking, just going crazy by the front door. I went to see what was going on, and there it was. Another brown box, sitting on the porch. Same handwriting, same size, no return address. This time, when I opened it, I found a small, faded teddy bear, its fur matted and grimy. There was also a short note, written on a scrap of paper, that just said, "Found this. Thought you might like it." I stood there for a while, holding that disgusting old bear in my hands, feeling my skin crawl. It didn't make sense. Who would leave something like this? And how did they even know where we lived? We called the police to report it, but they said it was probably nothing to worry about. Just some harmless prank, they told us. Keep an eye out, they said. But it's probably just kids having fun. So I tried to let it go. But then the packages kept coming. They always arrived late at night, and they started getting weirder, more disturbing. A stack of Polaroid pictures, all of them overexposed and blurred, showing random things like trees, parts of houses, a street corner. A rusty old pocket knife that looked like it hadn't been used in years. And always that same note, with those messy, scrawled words, saying things like, "I know you're watching," or "Do you remember this?" My partner was getting anxious, and so was I. We didn't know if we were being watched, or if this was some sick joke. I started losing sleep, wondering if tonight would be the night I'd hear the creak of footsteps on the porch, or if I'd wake up to see someone standing outside, staring in through the window. But the thing that scared me the most was that whoever was leaving these packages knew us. The way they wrote, the things they left, it felt personal, like they were trying to get into our heads, to send some message that we couldn't understand. And every night, I'd lie awake, listening, waiting for the sound of that next package, dreading what might be inside, because whoever it was, they were making it clear they knew where we lived, and they weren't going to stop. I started to feel like a prisoner in my own home. Every night, I'd double-check the locks, peek through the blinds, just waiting for the next package to show up. But it wasn't just the packages that had me on edge. It was everything else, the feeling that we were being watched, that someone was out there, keeping track of every move we made. So we installed cameras. 4 of them, covering the front porch, the driveway, the backyard, all the angles where someone could sneak up to leave something on our doorstep. I thought it'd help. I thought that maybe, just maybe, we'd catch whoever was doing this. And we did, sort of. One night, around 3 a.m., I woke up to an alert on my phone. Motion detected, front door camera. My heart raced as I fumbled to open the live feed. There it was, the silhouette of a person in the dark, hood pulled up, face hidden, standing just out of the camera's full view. They moved slowly, creeping along the porch, and for a second they turned toward the camera, and then just as quickly ducked out of sight. I tried to make out any details, their height, their build, but it was like they knew exactly how to avoid being seen. They didn't linger long, just a minute or so, but it was long enough for me to see them reach into their pocket, pull out something small, and leave it right by the door. I sat there, gripping my phone, barely able to breathe. I felt like they were taunting us, letting us know that even with the cameras, even with all the precautions we were taking, they could still get close, still make their presence known. The police came out again, looked over the footage, but there wasn't much they could do. There's no clear face, they said. No evidence of a crime. It was just a person on our porch, leaving a box, and the packages kept coming. There was one night, though, that still haunts me. I was sitting in the living room, trying to watch TV, trying to distract myself, when my phone buzzed, another motion alert. But this time, it wasn't from the front door. It was from the side of the house. I switched to the camera feed, and that's when I saw it. Someone standing just at the edge of the camera's view, close enough that I could see the outline of their face, but blurred in the shadows. They weren't moving, just standing there, watching. It felt like an eternity before they stepped away, disappearing into the darkness, leaving me shaking and sick to my stomach. I wanted to believe it was all some stupid prank, but it was hard to ignore the growing fear that it was more than that. That someone was out there watching us, learning about our lives, and playing some twisted game. We started hearing noises, too. Footsteps around the house, branches cracking under the weight of someone sneaking around. Once, we heard a faint tapping on our bedroom window late at night. By the time we got the courage to look, there was no one there. And still, the packages kept coming. Always the same brown boxes, always the same messy handwriting, and always with something inside that felt like a message. A single candle burnt halfway down. A worn-out shoe, covered in dirt, like it had been dug up from somewhere. An old picture frame with the glass shattered, and no photo inside. I started to wonder, was it just one person? Were there more? And no matter how many times we called the police, no matter how many sleepless nights we spent watching those cameras, we were left with nothing but questions and that sickening feeling that whoever was doing this knew exactly how to stay hidden, and knew exactly how to make us feel helpless. We were being watched. And every night, I felt that grip around my life tighten just a little bit more. One night, things took a darker turn. I had just gotten home late from work, tired, wanting nothing more than to crawl into bed and forget about everything for a while. But as soon as I stepped onto the porch, I knew something was wrong. There wasn't a package this time, but there was something else. A smell, metallic, almost like blood, mixed with the earthy scent of damp wood. And then I saw it. A red smear across the front step, like someone had dragged something heavy and wet across the wood. I felt my chest tighten. I didn't know what to do. Call the police again, or try to clean it up myself. But then my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. It was just one word. Enjoy. No name, no details, just that one chilling word. My hands were shaking as I dialed 911, telling them someone had been on my property, that there was some kind of mess on my porch. They sent an officer out, but when he arrived, it was already too late. Whatever it was, it had dried up, and the officer just shrugged it off, said it was probably some animal or a prank. But I knew it wasn't. Whoever was doing this was trying to send a message. After that, the tension was unbearable. Every noise, every flicker of movement outside made me jump. My partner and I tried to stay calm, to convince each other it was just some creep trying to mess with us. But deep down, we both knew there was more to it than that. And the more we tried to ignore it, the more it felt like the walls were closing in. Then one night, we heard something new, whispering. It was just outside our bedroom window, low and fast, like someone was speaking in a language I couldn't quite understand. I sat up in bed, heart pounding, trying to make out the words. I couldn't see anything, but I could feel the presence, right on the other side of that glass, so close I could almost feel their breath. I grabbed my phone, turned on the camera feed, but it was dead. All the cameras, all 4 of them, were offline. It was like someone had just flipped a switch. That was the moment I felt real fear, the kind that sinks into your bones, makes your body go cold. We didn't sleep that night. We sat on the edge of the bed, listening, waiting for something to happen. And eventually, when the sun finally came up, we tried to laugh it off, tried to pretend it was nothing. But it wasn't. The cameras stayed offline until the next morning, when they suddenly flickered back to life on their own. And then, things escalated again. The packages, they didn't stop. They got worse. One day, I found a stack of photos in a box. Pictures of our house. The front door, the windows, the porch, all taken from different angles at different times of the day. There were even shots of us, me and my partner, sitting in the living room, totally unaware that someone. I remember holding those photos, my stomach churning, feeling like I was going to be sick. How long had they been watching? How close had they gotten without us knowing? And then, my partner found something else. A rusty pocket knife, buried in our backyard, sticking up out of the dirt like some sick, twisted grave marker. It was planted just deep enough to hide it from view, but not so deep that it couldn't be found if someone was looking. And there was another note, tied to the handle, that just said, "You're almost there. Almost where? Almost what? We had no idea what it meant, but I could feel that grip tightening around us, and I knew we were running out of time. Whoever was doing this was toying with us, inching closer and closer to something we couldn't see coming. And we were trapped, playing a game we didn't understand, with someone who knew exactly how to make us feel like there was no way out. Felt like we were sinking. Every day, every night, it was like something invisible was pushing down on us, closing in tighter, making it impossible to breathe. And then, the break-in happened. It was a Friday night. We had tried to have a normal evening, ordered takeout, watched some mindless TV to distract ourselves. But around 2 a.m., we were jolted awake by the sound of glass shattering. Instantly, I knew it wasn't just a dream, wasn't just some random noise. I leaped out of bed, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it might burst out of my chest, and ran to the hallway. And that's when I heard the footsteps, heavy, deliberate, and close, coming from the kitchen. My partner whispered for me to grab my phone and lock myself in the bedroom, but I was too stunned to move. I heard the sounds of drawers being opened, things being tossed to the floor. Someone was rummaging through our things, looking for something. And then, from the darkness, a low voice, just loud enough to make out, "Where are you?" I bolted back into the bedroom, my hands trembling so much I could barely dial 911. I whispered into the phone, trying not to make any noise, telling the operator someone was in our house. They said to stay on the line, that officers were on the way, but it felt like an eternity passed in those few minutes. We stayed locked in the bedroom, pressing our ears to the door, trying to make out what was happening. The sounds of rummaging, of muffled muttering, then silence, deafening silence. I couldn't stand it anymore. I crept over to the security monitor on my phone, hoping, praying that the cameras were still working, and I saw him, just his back, hunched over, moving through the living room, his face turned away from the camera, but I could tell it was him. The same build, the same movements as the figure in the package's videos. It was like he belonged there, like he was comfortable walking through our house, touching our things, and then he did the strangest thing. He walked over to the front door, unlocked it, and stepped outside, leaving the door wide open behind him, like he wanted us to know exactly how easily he could come and go. He didn't run, didn't seem in any hurry, just left. By the time the police showed up, he was long gone. They found the shattered window in the kitchen, the drawers left open, things scattered all over the floor, but there was nothing missing, nothing at all. It was like the whole thing was just a show, just another way to let us know he could reach us whenever he wanted. They took a report, made some half-hearted promise to patrol the area more often, and then left, leaving us standing in our wrecked living room, trying to make sense of why someone would go through all that trouble to break in, just to walk away without taking a single thing. That night, we slept with the lights on, or at least we tried to sleep. Every noise felt like a threat. Every shadow felt like him, standing just out of view, watching. I could still hear his voice in my head, that question he whispered into the dark. "Where are you?" Like he knew we were hiding, like he was playing with us, waiting for the right moment to finally reveal whatever twisted game he was playing. We knew we couldn't stay there much longer, but where could we go? How do you run from someone who seems to know every move you're going to make before you even think of making it? And still, the packages kept coming. The last package was different. I remember it so clearly. The sound of the knock on the door woke me up. It was just before dawn, that eerie time of morning when everything is still gray and the world feels heavy. I thought maybe I dreamt it, but then I heard it again. A slow, deliberate knock, 3 times, and then silence. I didn't want to open the door. My hands were already shaking, and I could feel my heart racing, my skin prickling with that familiar sense of dread. But I forced myself up, one step at a time, and crept to the front door. I peeked through the peephole, expecting to see the silhouette of a figure, but there was nothing. No one. When I opened the door, it was there. A box. But this time it was bigger, much bigger. It looked heavy, almost like a crate, sealed tightly with duct tape that crisscrossed every inch of it. And scrawled across the top, in that same messy handwriting, was a single word, finale. I stared at it, trying to figure out what it meant, why it was so much larger than the other packages. And that's when I noticed the smell. Foul, sour, like something rotting, seeping through the seams of the box. My stomach turned, and I felt bile rise in the back of my throat. I didn't want to open it. I knew whatever was inside, it was meant to hurt, to terrify. But I couldn't leave it there, not knowing what it was, not knowing if it was some kind of sick threat or warning. So I grabbed a knife from the kitchen, held my breath, and started cutting through the layers of tape. When I finally got the box open, the smell hit me like a wall. And inside was a mangled, decomposing animal, a raccoon, or at least what was left of it. It looked like it had been dead for a while, its body twisted and broken, pieces of its fur stuck to the inside of the box. But that wasn't the worst part. Beneath the animal, there was something else. A photo. A single, glossy print of me and my partner, taken from inside our house. It was us, sitting on the couch, unaware, eyes fixed on the TV. And across the photo, written in red marker, were the words, "I'm closer than you think." I dropped the box, stumbling back, trying to get away from that smell, from those words, from the realization that whoever had been stalking us had been inside our home, inside our lives, without us ever knowing. I felt exposed, like every wall of our house had been stripped away, leaving us completely vulnerable to whoever was playing this game. We called the police, of course, but I knew it didn't matter. This time, there was no fleeting figure, no shadow on the cameras. This was proof, and still, it felt like nothing. They came, took the box away, filed another report, but it was all just routine. The officer's voice sounded far away, muffled by the pounding in my head, the fear and anger and helplessness swirling around me. My partner and I couldn't stay there another night. We packed a couple of bags, shoved the rest of our things into boxes, and left. Found a hotel a few towns over, somewhere we could finally breathe without feeling like someone was watching our every move. It's been a few weeks now, and we're still searching for a new place, somewhere that feels like we can make a fresh start. But every time I close my eyes, I see that word written across the box, finale, and I wonder, was that the end? Or is it just the beginning of whatever's next? Sometimes, late at night, I still wake up thinking I hear footsteps outside the window, or I'll see a flash of movement in my peripheral vision, and for a split second, I'll be sure that he's there watching, waiting. And I know deep down that whoever was playing this twisted game is still out there, somewhere, and that no matter where we go, no matter how far we run, he'll always be just a little closer than we think.